All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Friday, everybody. Today is December 20th, 2024. The top story this morning is this sell-off that has been induced by the Federal Reserve. It is continuing this morning. Yesterday, when we went live, we were talking about that big bloodbath that we saw on Wednesday following the FOMC. We were in the midst yesterday morning of something of a dead cat bounce. Stocks were looking a little better, chipping away, recovering some of those losses. And then, of course, shortly after the live stream ended, the dead cat bounce, it just fizzled out, or maybe it bled out would be a more accurate term. Stocks ended up closing. I believe one of the indexes was just barely positive, pretty much flat on the day, up a few, down a few. Right back where we were Wednesday at the close. This morning, that sell-off is resuming. Stocks are heading lower, maybe not with the same ferocity we had on Wednesday, but they are heading lower. Now, we got a couple of things going on today, guys. First of all, today's options expiration, triple witching. Now, every time I mention triple witching, I tend to get a little bit of like an eye roll from some people because every now and then triple witching comes up and people are like, oh my God, it's going to be Armageddon and there's going to be a mass sell-off and a big spike in the VIX. And then it usually, typically, almost always never happens. You do tend to get a little bit of volatility around triple witching. That's options and index expiration. But today, it's worth paying a little bit of extra attention to because of the size of that move, the magnitude of that fall on Wednesday. That may aggravate triple witching a little bit. So people are a little nervous about that this morning. It's going to be an interesting last couple of hours of trading today. Also going on right now, we have got the threat of a government shutdown is looming. And I can't believe we're already back here. We knew this was coming, right? I mean, we did know it was coming. I just didn't think it would get here so soon. I kind of figured, you'd have the inauguration and then we'd have the silly debt ceiling and everything else debate. Well, nope. Looks like midnight tonight, the government's probably going to shut down. Well, what happened? First, we had 1,500 pages of pork-laden BS. They called it the omnibus or whatever it was, right? Speaker Johnson said, I'll never do this, and then he did exactly this. 1,500 pages. There were some ridiculous things were slammed in there, like convicted felons are going to be renamed justice-involved people. Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah. Oh, is he a rapist? No, he's just a justice-involved person. Well, isn't that like lovely? What is that doing in a farm bill, in a disaster relief bill, in a bill to keep the government open? What does that have to do with any of those things? Absolutely nothing. And there was 1,500 pages of that BS were in the bill. And then, of course, Vivek and Elon got a hold of it, drew some attention to it, and said, no, we shouldn't do this. And that bill failed. And then yesterday, President Trump had his preferred version of the bill. It was a much slimmed down 100-page version. That went up for a vote, but that bill included the 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling, basically a blank check for Mr. Orange for the next 2 years. Now, guys, I warned about this during the election, and I told you it doesn't matter who wins to a certain extent, because no matter what, Zerpenberg's coming back. And here's the Donald saying, give me 2 years of a blank check. Look, Republicans, you talk a big game when you're not in power about the whole debt ceiling and getting spending under control. You're up. It's your turn. What the hell are you guys doing? The same thing you always do already, and you haven't even assumed power yet. That's the amazing thing. So that bill failed. We had some hardliners. The few actual physical hardliners that we have in Congress torpedoed the Donald's 100-page slimmed down version yesterday. Now you got like 12 hours remaining, 15 hours remaining until the midnight deadline. So it looks like we're getting a government shutdown for Christmas. All right. So that's going on. Also, tariffs are back. We're talking about tariffs again today. Again, the Donald, he's making headlines here. Now, you might be saying, oh, the tariff story, this is nothing new. Well, no, that was the other tariff story, the China tariff story. And then, oh, no, the other one, the Mexico one. No, the other one, the Canada one. This morning, it's the EU. The European Union, he's threatening the EU with tariffs if they don't close their trade deficit with the United States by buying more LNG and oil products from the U.S. So, look, guys, tariffs, I don't know how to break this to you. I hope this is just strong arm negotiating. If he's really going to put these big, giant tariffs on freaking everybody, our biggest trade partners, the EU, China, Mexico, Canada, right? And I get it. There's unfairness going on in trade. It's always been like that. But let's face facts, guys. This is going to be inflationary. You're going to see a big step change higher, whether it's a one-off, a big single move, or a sustained move upward over time. I don't know. But this will drive consumer prices higher. Get ready for higher prices if all of these tariff threats come to fruition. Now, speaking of higher prices, this morning we got PCE, or personal consumption expenditures. That's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, and it was slightly below expected. So that's the first, I'll call it good news, barely good news, that we've had in a couple of months on the inflation front. Jerome Powell hinted at this on Wednesday. He had mentioned that the November PCE data looked a little bit better. PCE headline number 2.4% year over year. That's versus expectations of 2.5%. And it is up slightly from 2.3% last month. So still well ahead of the Fed's arbitrary 2% target. On a month-over-month basis, headline PCE was only 0.1% higher. That's versus expectations of 0.2%, down from 0.2 last month. Core PCE remains stubbornly high, 2.8%, well above that 2% target. Now, that is a little bit lower than the 2.9 that the market was expecting, flat from last month. And month-over-month, core PCE came in at 0.1% month-over-month versus 0.2 that was expected, and down rather considerably from 0.3 last month. So overall, this PCE data better than expected, although still too high, still in some areas moving in the wrong direction. But the market liked that. We were in the midst of a pretty big sell-off this morning, got a little bit of a green shoot on that inflation data when that hit. We already talked about the tariffs. Nvidia was in the news yesterday. The information is reporting once again. I tell you, the information, that website has been fantastic over the last year or so, breaking a lot of stories in the AI space, in the semiconductor space. Nvidia has been asked by the Department of Justice to probe how so many of their chips ended up in China. And that's something we talked about on this channel quite a bit, guys. Look, these things, they passed these export restrictions. You're not allowed to sell them to China. We talked about this with the hyperscale Nexus story. It was all like this big billion-dollar scheme to smuggle these things into China. And on top of that, now you've got things like websites, Alibaba. You can buy H100 GPUs on Alibaba. You can buy H100 GPUs on eBay, shipping from China. Entire warehouses full of H100 GPUs. The demand is insane. We're supply limited, and all these stupid, ridiculous talking points. How are these things being sold by the hundreds on freaking eBay shipping from China if the demand is so insane and if it was illegal to sell them to China in the first place? Obviously, huge amounts of these chips made it into China. My guess is it's via Singapore. Companies, Chinese companies setting up fronts in Singapore, buying them and sending them right there. And the Chinese bought so many of them that they're like, what the hell are we going to do with them? Oh, well, sell them on eBay. So the DOJ is telling NVIDIA, you got to look into this. And I'm sure NVIDIA is going to investigate themselves and find no wrongdoing. Shocking verdict. But at the very least, somebody is asking that question. It's about time. It only took you guys 2.5 years and $18 trillion worth of stock bubble to start asking questions. Isn't that just lovely? Biglots going bankrupt. That's not really news. Biglots has been going out of business for a while, but yesterday, Biglots actually filed their Chapter 11, and they announced that they are closing all 900 remaining stores. Now, Biglots has already closed about a third of their stores this year, but they were supposed to keep the rest open. They were negotiating with some private equity company to come in and take over and continue operating. Those negotiations didn't go well. And now 27,000 people are at risk of going out of work at those 900 stores that are shutting down. There's that continued unwelcome softening in the labor market that Jerome Powell talked about, 27,000 people. And the FAA has closed the airspace over New Jersey, over several major cities because of the drone story. This is interesting. What do they call it? I forget, temporary flight restrictions, or TFRs, that have been announced all over New Jersey. After a week of telling us that there is no security risk, that there is no threat whatsoever. And don't worry, most of these drone sightings are just people misinterpreting commercial aircraft, or there's no validity to any of it. Nothing happens here. And then they go and they close the airspace over some of the most densely populated areas of the country. Guys, this drone thing, what the hell? Seriously, what the hell is going on? Will you just Just come clean already so that I don't have to listen to these freaking UFO guys anymore talking about how it's Zoldan, the intergalactic ruler, has come here and he's going to suck the brains out of all of us. And well, look, hey, if it sells tinfoil hats, I'm all about it, all right? If it moves this product, by the way, great stocking stuffer, get it just in time for Christmas. If it moves tinfoil hats, I'm all about it, but I'm really sick of reading about this stuff. What the hell is the drone story going on? Somebody knows, and they just won't tell us. And now they're closing airspace while telling us there's no threats. You don't close airspace without a threat, without some risk, all right? So WTF. We got a lot going on today, guys. Why don't we shrink my big melon up ahead, and let's see what's going on in markets this morning. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button if you're new here, because we do this every day. So come back and have your coffee with the melon heads. And by the way, speaking of doing this every day, guys, I just want to mention there will be no afternoon show today. We're probably going to be done with the Friday afternoon show for the time being. Also, next week with the holiday schedule, there will be no morning show on the 25th and the 26th. Other than that, we will be back on all regular times next week. And something we haven't looked at in quite a while here, guys, the fear greed index is into extreme fear. Oh no, what happened to my rate cuts? 22 on the fear greed index, guys. We haven't been down here for quite a while. Look, that sell-off that really took the market by surprise, that hawkish cut from the Fed on Wednesday, market swung right into extreme fear. I just want to show you guys on the timeline here. This is showing the fear greed index. We never spend very much time down here. It's just worth pointing out. We were down here in August after that Godzilla sell-off and the fears of the unwind of the yen carry trade. We only spent about a week, maybe a week and a half down at these levels. We've now been here for about 2 or 3 days. So typically, we don't spend very much time down here. That probably means there are some buyers. Maybe once this triple witching is behind us today, the Santa Claus rally everybody loves to talk about, maybe that comes in. Just be careful, guys. It usually doesn't get much worse than this as far as market sentiment goes. But right now, we've got the S&P is negative once again. It's down 0.5% or 30 points to the downside. We were down quite a bit, almost 100 points lower at one point. Now, this big green shoot right here, that was when the PCE inflation came out, and that was slightly better than expected. So the market got a little bit of relief there, but still in negative territory for the day. The Dow, meanwhile, is down another 142 points. Same story here. We were down about 300. We had the PCE came in, a little bit of a rally, but it looks like that's not going to last so long. And the NASDAQ is leading the way lower, down 167 points or 0.79% lower. Once again, catching a little bounce off of that PCE report. Meanwhile, the DXY a little bit weaker this morning, but pretty much right back where we were yesterday, 108.01. We're down about 40 basis points. The dollar had continued higher through most of yesterday. The dollar has been on a tear, guys. There's a lot of talk about currency crisis right now, a lot of talk about Forex, a lot of things going on in Japan, things going on in Brazil. The real is collapsing. Keep an eye on that DXY, guys, the dollar wrecking ball, if you will. If this Dixie keeps grinding higher, we are going to have big problems. And watch that liquidity in the bond market as well. Speaking of the bond market, we got yields are lower across the board this morning. The 30-year Treasury down almost 4 basis points at 4.702. The 10-year is down 6.5 points to 4.507. The 2-year, 4.263, down 5.5 points. And the 1 month is down 0.5 point, sitting here at 4.30. So bond yields moving lower, guys. Bond prices moving higher. People are buying bonds. So a little bit of a safe haven demand going on this morning. Looking over at the commodities board, that safe haven demand is translating over to metals. Finally, some green in the metal space. It has been a rough week and a half for gold and silver here. Spot gold back above $2,600, sitting at $2,615 an ounce. That's up $20 this morning, almost $21, 0.8% higher for gold. Spot silver is back above 29 here at $29.19. We had seen a 28 handle for a while there, but we're about 16 cents higher, or about 0.5% to the upside. I like the shiny. Meanwhile, copper is up 0.1%. Platinum is up 1%. Palladium is up 1% and change. And crude oil is not looking so good here at $68.84 for January WTI futures. That's down $1.74, about 2.5% lower for oil this morning. Also in the commodity space, guys, Bitcoin has had a rough 3 days here. We're sitting here right now. This is as priced on Coinbase at 94,916, but even that doesn't do it justice. At one point overnight, we went as low as $92,115. So Bitcoin has sold off almost at one point $16,000 in 3 days. Big move down in Bitcoin. I don't think this is anything specific to Bitcoin going on here, guys. You had a little bit of panic in markets on Wednesday. And, Bitcoin is a risk asset. It's about as far out on the risk spectrum as you can go. And so it's vulnerable to these flights into the dollar. Bitcoin got hit harder than most other assets here, although still sitting at 94,000. I mean, prices are all the way back down to where they were at the end of November. We're back about 3 weeks here. Now, also going on in the commodities board, guys, something to keep an eye on here. Bird flu drives U.S. egg prices to all-time highs before Christmas. I guess 2022 called, and they want their headlines back because haven't we been here before? Didn't we? This is not an old story, guys. This is from this morning. Look at this thing coming out here. U.S. wholesale egg prices are shattering records as an accelerating outbreak of bird flu in laying hens slashes supplies while shoppers buy more to bake Christmas cookies and other holiday treats. The increases hit consumers already grappling with stubborn inflation and bracing for potentially higher prices on a broad range of items if President-elect Donald Trump follows through on his plans to slap tariffs on goods from China or Mexico. You just cannot have an article without your Trump goggles these days. All roads lead to Mr. Orange. Wholesale prices for large eggs reached $5.57 a dozen in the Midwest on Wednesday, up 150% from a year ago, and topping the previous record of $5.46 from December of 2022, the last time we had one of those egg panics. Prices are even harder to stomach in California, go figure, where supplies are further constrained by rules that prohibit farmers from raising hens in cages. Their eggs set an eye-popping record of $8.85 per dozen. Oh my God. Almost $9 eggs. And we're not talking about like the fancy brown ones with the omega-3s and, unicorns and rainbows and organic. And, we read to our chickens every night. And so we charge you extra for the eggs. No, this is like your base grade A dozen, not even the fancy stuff. Almost $9 a dozen. What are they doing in California? Those high prices are a bonanza for farmers who manage to avoid bird flu outbreaks and are not locked into long-term pricing arrangements that help control costs at some major retailers, but consumers could still suffer. So eggs going sky high just in time for Christmas dinner. Now, let's talk real quick about this one, guys. I don't want to spend too much time on this. We've heard this story before. It's usually a nothing burger, but be vigilant for this, especially this afternoon. Wall Street's next test after the Fed is a $6.5 trillion triple witching. Wall Street traders come to grips with the Federal Reserve plans to slow the pace of interest rate cuts. Friday's U.S. options expiration that has historically stoked turbulence offers a final hurdle to end-of-year calm. The quarterly triple witching will see some $6.5 trillion worth of options tied to individual stocks, indexes, and ETFs fall off the board. This year's largest and among the biggest on record, though still slightly smaller than a year ago, according to an estimate from derivatives analytical firm ASM 500. This quarter's expiration comes at a critical time for market positioning following the Fed's decision on Wednesday to lower borrowing costs for a third straight meeting, while signaling the central bank is ready to go more slowly on reductions. While the risk is sometimes overblown by Wall Street players, share volumes typically spike during the options expiration, which has a reputation for causing sudden price moves as contracts disappear and traders roll over their existing positions or start new ones. And the other thing you got to worry about here, they're not mentioning, is market makers unwinding their hedges. If you get a big net reduction in positioning, when a market maker sells a call, he typically buys the underlying shares to support that call to minimize his risk. That share buying tends to propel share prices higher, obviously. Now, when those calls expire, if somebody doesn't take out a new one, the market maker unwinds that hedge. He sells those shares. So it could result in some selling this afternoon. I'm not saying it will. And they do mention how this tends to be overblown. So I don't want to ring the alarm bells too hard on this one here. It's just something to be vigilant for this afternoon. This could take a complicated situation and make it worse. Meanwhile, the House rejects a GOP plan backed by Trump as a government barrels towards a shutdown. Guys, I think we're kind of like forgetting Trump isn't president yet. I mean, the other two, they're still out there doing things unburdened by what has been or drinking their prune juice, whatever they're doing. But the whole world seems to have forgotten Donald Trump is not yet president. Even Congress, it seems like Trump is deciding what happens in Congress here. I'm just pointing that one out here. House Republicans' slimmed down plan to try to avert a government shutdown was defeated in a hastily called vote on Thursday as several dozen GOP lawmakers joined with Democrats in rejecting the proposal endorsed by President-elect Donald Trump. The revised legislation proposed extending government funding for 3 months and providing more than $100 billion in disaster relief and aid for farmers, while stripping out a series of other provisions such as restrictions on investments in China, 9/11 healthcare funds, and new rules on pharmacy benefits managers. It also proposed suspending the nation's borrowing limit for 2 years. That's kind of a big one. Do not hand Mr. Orange a 2-year blank check. I'm sorry, guys. It should not work that way. Republicans are supposed to be the party of less government spending. It had 174 votes in favor and 235 against, with one member voting present, well short of the 2/3 supermajority required under special fast-track procedures. Crucially, it also was shy of a simple majority of the GOP-controlled chamber, dimming its chances of being brought to the floor again and marking an embarrassing setback for both Trump and embattled House Speaker Mike Johnson. In all, 38 Republicans, mostly fiscal hardliners, voted against the bill, along with almost all Democrats. So, guys, the infighting, it's back. The debt ceiling thing, it's back. All this stuff, they're probably going to shut down the government. I don't see any way that they get a deal done here by midnight tonight, which means the government would probably shut down heading into the Christmas holiday. Let's talk real quick about inflation again. We gave you the numbers in the monologue. PCE annual price index, it rose 2.4% year over year for the month of November. You can see it here in the chart. That's up from 2.3% in October and up from 2.1% in September. So inflation is moving in the wrong direction, albeit at a slower pace. The market was expecting 2.5. They got 2.4, a little bit of relief there. On a month-over-month basis, inflation actually came down a little bit. This is headline inflation month over month, and it came in at 0.1%, lower than the 0.2 expected and lower than the 0.2 that we had in both September and October. So the month over month number is showing inflation moving in the right direction. That should come as quite a relief to traders here. Now, core inflation remains stubbornly high here, 2.8% year over year for core inflation, which strips out food and energy. Slightly below the 2.9 the market was expecting, but even with the 2.8 that we had back in October and well above the 3 consecutive months of 2.7. So core inflation still stubbornly high. Month over month, though, it looks a little bit better. Core inflation month over month came in at 0.1% versus 0.2 expected and down rather sharply from 0.3%. So overall, all this numbers on the whole, guys, inflation a little bit better than expected here. That's the takeaway from PCE, and the market liked it. So maybe that gives Jay Powell a little bit of wiggle room, and he hinted at that during his press conference on Wednesday. Now let's talk tariffs, guys. Trump threatens tariffs if the EU doesn't buy more U.S. oil and gas. Drill, baby, drill. Buy, baby, buy. And tariff, baby, tariff, apparently is the headline this morning. President-elect Donald Trump warned the European Union that its exports will get hit with U.S. tariffs if its member states don't buy more American oil and gas. Mr. Orange is on the rampage, and he hasn't even taken office yet. I told the European Union that they must make up their tremendous deficit with the United States by the large-scale purchase of our oil and gas. Otherwise, it's tariffs all the way, he said on Truth Social. The U.S. is the world's largest producer of crude oil and the biggest exporter of liquefied natural gas. LNG buyers, including the EU and Vietnam, have already talked about purchasing more fuel from the U.S., in part to deter the threat of tariffs. So hopefully this is just bluster here, and the EU was already planning on doing this anyway. Look, they're certainly not going to get it from Russia, so maybe this is going to happen anyway, and then Donald can take credit and say it was my threat of tariffs that made that happen. Entirely plausible that's what's going on here. But guys, all this tariff talk, keep an eye on it. Take it seriously. Tariffs are paid by the consumer, by the importer, not by the exporter. Ultimately, if these threats get followed through, it means higher consumer prices here in the United States, and they're already too freaking high. Now let's talk about this one here from The Information. U.S. prompts Nvidia probe into how chips ended up in China. The Information reports, I have a theory on how the chips ended up in China. You ready for this crazy theory? Nvidia and Supermicro don't care at all about chip exports or Taiwan, China's, geopolitical tensions. They just want money, and they are selling these chips through third parties into China. They know they're going into China. They don't care, which means they're willingly break the law. That's what's going on. And the U.S. has asked Nvidia to look into it. Like, gosh, if y'all could investigate if you're committing crimes and then get back to us, that'd be swell. Gee, I wonder what the outcome of that investigation might be. The U.S. Department of Commerce has recently asked Nvidia to look into how the company's products ended up in China over the past year. The Information reported on Thursday, citing a person close to the department. I wonder if he's related to that person familiar with the matter. Anyway, the chip giant has asked big distributors such as Supermicro Computer and Dell Technologies to conduct spot checks on their customers in Southeast Asia, the report said. And I'm sure that was a very easy communication for Supermicro because they're already under investigation by the DOJ. And so the DOJ is like, hey, while we're already in your office with windbreakers, could you look into this other thing, you unbearable frauds? NVIDIA's artificial intelligence chips are embedded in server products made by Supermicro and Dell. The Information reported that 5 different people involved in smuggling NVIDIA chips said they have managed so far to evade detection during recent inspections by Supermicro. We insist that our customers and partners strictly adhere to all export control restrictions. Any unauthorized deviation of previously owned products, including any gray market resales, would be a burden on our business, not a benefit, an NVIDIA spokesperson said in an emailed response. Some of the customers duplicated serial numbers of the servers containing NVIDIA chips that they purchased from Supermicro and attached them to other servers that they had access to, the report said, citing a person close to Supermicro. In some cases, smugglers even altered the serial numbers in the operating system for the servers, the report said. Guys, look, I don't know what they did or how they did it. I suspect Singapore was a conduit to smuggle all this stuff in. But look, when you can see there are more than a dozen listings on eBay in China for H100 GPUs shipping from China with more than 10 available, which is eBay speak for like a huge freaking inventory. That could be 10, that could be 100, it could be 100,000. There are massive warehouses full of these things sitting unused in China. How much of that insane demand was real and how much of it was smugglers dumping these things illegally into China? And by the way, the whole national security thing and the Chinese military developing artificial intelligence, Nvidia, Supermicro, aren't you guys American companies? Isn't that treason? I just throw it out there. You guys do what you want with them. But look, guys, these things, huge quantities of these obviously made it there. And do you think Jensen Huang is an idiot? I don't think Jensen Huang is an idiot. Jensen Huang is not stupid. He's a lot of things, but stupid sure as hell isn't one of them. Jensen Huang knows what's going on. He knew his chips were going into China. He probably possessed the power to stop it, and he did nothing because you got to make those top-line revenue numbers quarter after quarter. And so maybe that's why these export restrictions didn't really change things for NVIDIA. NVIDIA stock, though, is doing all right here, down 1.25% today. $129. Look, it's down from like 145. NVIDIA has had corrections of this size before. So until I see this thing go below $100, I'm not going to be jumping on the it's all over for NVIDIA train. Look, I think there's unspeakable accounting fraud and shenanigans and round tripping and channel stuffing going on in the AI space. You guys all know about that. Is today the day it breaks? Again, probably not, but sooner or later it will break. Be careful, guys. Big Lots is closing every store and going out of business. Sales will be held at all remaining locations in the coming days. This one is in Fast Company this morning. After spending much of 2024 closing stores and recent months trying to solidify a sale of the company to keep its doors open, discount retail chain Big Lots has announced that it now plans to close all stores and go out of business. On Thursday, Big Lots released a statement saying it now plans to go out of business and is closing all of its remaining stores. Big Lots says it came to the decision to prepare to commence going out of business sales after a deal with Nexus Capital Management fell through. Now, here's scrolling all the way down. What about Big Lots employees? Big Lots did not address the impact that closing stores would have on its employees. Bloomberg pegs the company's employee headcount at around 27,000 people. Unfortunately, most of these workers will most likely lose their jobs once the going out of business sales are complete. So continued unwelcoming softening in the labor market as yet another big retailer goes out of business. And guys, let's also remember Big Lots. That's an anchor store at a lot of these strip malls around the country. Commercial real estate, keep an eye on that one. There's going to be 900 big vacant anchor locations at strip malls around the country now because of this. That's got to hit somebody, some of these CMBS guys. It's going to hit them in the wallet. Now, another one I want to mention, I saw this tweet this morning. This is important because yesterday we were talking about Darden restaurants on the live stream and how it was like a rare silver lining in the big gray cloud of suck that is the restaurant industry. And it looked like maybe that was a sign of a bottom in restaurants. And then I see this one from @ChicagoBars on Twitter. Now, this guy's he follows the bar and restaurant scene in the city of Chicago. He's got a pretty big following, seems like a credible guy. And he's saying, I have never seen bar and restaurant closings coming as fast as they are right now in Chicago. Another one, this time in a pretty major hospitality district, announced today. And he's linking to this article about a 13-year-old pub that's shutting down in Wall Street. And we're not talking about a dive. This is a really nice place that's shutting down. I don't know if this is a Chicago story. Things in Chirac, obviously not so good. Or is this a restaurant story? But since yesterday I had mentioned that, hey, there might be some signs of life in the restaurant industry, and then a few hours later I see this, I felt like I should share this with you guys. A guy who follows the bar scene in a big city says he has never seen bar and restaurant closings coming as fast as they are right now. So maybe the bottom is not in for restaurants. And last but not least, the FAA drone flights are temporarily banned over some areas of New Jersey. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds in this, guys, but look, this does not match the language coming out of our government officials. They have told us for weeks that there is no security or public safety threat whatsoever, and now they are closing the airspace over vast swaths of New Jersey. If there's no threat to safety, if there's no threat to security, then why are you closing the airspace? Why is it just so normal and so accepted that we let these bureaucratic a-holes boldface lie to us over and over again? This is getting ridiculous. Somebody knows. Somebody just tell us what the hell's going on. Seriously, just talk. All right. And if this ends up being just a story that was manufactured to scare people so we could get a Defense Department bill rammed through with all kinds of anti-drone warfare technology, well, then a strongly worded letter from me may just follow. I'd hate to have to do that, but you guys leave me no choice. Anyway, wow, we're pretty deep here. Thank you so much to Charles G, who says, good, shut it down, no more taxes. If only that were true, Charles. Look, I am of the government shutdown. Don't threaten me with a good time. That is definitely how I roll, but it does not mean taxes go down. I think you probably know that too. But look, the government shutdowns, they are actually a net expense. They add to government spending because shutdowns cost money and you have to pay for them after you open it up. Typically, spending increases. But the whole point of a shutdown is you force legislation that cuts spending. That's the important part. We never do that. We never do that part. All right. We just do the shutdown. Then we increase spending anyway. And the shutdown becomes an added expense on top of that. Maybe this time will be different. Call me a hopeless romantic, but maybe, just maybe, this time is different. And we actually get some spending cuts. We're fresh off an election. Everybody campaigned on cutting spending. Oh my God, the Doge bros and Elon and Vivek are going to solve our $36 trillion debt. I remain skeptical, but hopeful. Maybe that actually happens. Thank you, Charles, for supporting the channel. T.A. Chapman says, yes, shut it down. Another government shutdown proponent. No disability pay, no lowly federal pay right in time for Christmas. I see. Remember, military families, happy Friday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Pointing out the human cost, you are right to do so, T.A. Chapman. Guys, remember, the government is a big-time employer. And I don't know if the government shuts down today. Does it affect paychecks right before Christmas? Probably not. My guess is this will affect paychecks come January. But that being said, not getting paid sucks. You might be surprised to learn that. So we are talking about inflicting hardship on people here, guys. And so, look, I have my libertarian leanings. It is important to remember the human cost of these things we're talking about here. And to remember, there is no painless way out of our current spending problem. It's going to hurt everybody. That includes the things that you like. If you're a big defense guy, The military has to be cut. If you're a big social safety net person, entitlements have to be cut. If you like farm subsidies because you're a farmer, those have to be cut. The only answer, guys, is you got to cut everything. It's going to hurt everybody. And that means when it's your turn, it's going to suck. Anyways, thank you very much, T.A. Chapman. I appreciate the support of the channel, and thank you for pointing that out as well. Becky Heffernan says, safe and blessed holiday season for everybody. Same to you, Becky. Thank you so much for supporting the channel as a Melonhead member for 7 months, and thank you for the good vibes. Merry Christmas, everybody, to you. Joey Socks gifts 5 Nobody Special Finance memberships. Thank you, Paulie Walnuts, for supporting the channel. Guys, if you got one of those memberships, be sure and say thank you to Mr. Socks. Appreciate the support of the channel, brother. My buddy, the Nashville Pasta Man, is back. Says, good morning, Jack and Mish. Merry Christmas. Recommendation movie called Rollover. I've never seen that one. Saudis sell off bonds and buy gold, crushing worldwide bond markets with Chris Christopherson. Could I do a Chris Christopherson impression? I don't know. I'm just going to try to do my Chris Christopherson. I don't know what to do, but I've seen all the Blade movies, and he just speaks in really short staccato. What's the word I'm looking for? So anyways, that was my Chris Christopherson. It's unrefined, unpolished. I've never done that before, but I just tried it. All right, Rollover. I'm going to check that one out. I like the idea of the Saudis crashing the bond market by buying gold. Thank you so much for the good vibes, Pasta Man, and thank you for supporting the channel. Oh, he's back again. He says, Trump calls debt ceiling very unnecessary. Isn't it amazing now that the election is behind us? The debt ceiling is no longer necessary. And hey, let's remember, Trump has a reputation for going bankrupt. So are you surprised that a guy with a reputation for not paying debts doesn't think limits on debts are a very good idea? Do we really need to be surprised here? Like, look, I voted for the guy. All right. I did not vote for Kamina, but let's not act like he is the Wizard of Oz who is going to solve all of our problems. This guy has many flaws, of which are being laid bare right now. He wants a 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling, a blank check to do whatever he wants for 2 years as much as possible with a supermajority in Congress. Dangerous, even if it's your guy in power. And remember, if you're on the fence about it, imagine the other guy on the other side asking for the same thing. Would you be okay? If the answer is no, then you shouldn't be okay with your guy doing it. Thank you so much, Nashville Pasta Man, for supporting the channel. And thank you, Harmon Air LLC, who says, doesn't everyone read to their chickens at night? I don't read to them at night, but I do talk to them a little bit more than a sane man should. Me and my daughters talk to our chickens as if we're having two-way conversations. We answer their questions and things like that. It's cute. But by the way, my lady's not laying very many eggs right now. They're about 3 years old. It's getting cold. The season change. I'm starting to get a little bit worried here, man. Production is down in the Coupe de Gamble right now. So with eggs at all-time highs, that's not a good sign for me. But thank you very much, Harmon Air, for supporting the channel. Thank you, Grandpa says, USA exports, jobs, inflation in dollars, imports cheap crap and debt. It is time to revitalize and protect our manufacturing base. I agree. I do think we should revitalize our manufacturing base, especially things like medicines and critical infrastructure like chips that we get from overseas. You know, if this conflict does break out in the South China Sea, and I hope it doesn't, it's going to be catastrophic for the supply chain, like much worse than COVID as far as supply chain disruption goes. That being said, American labor is more expensive than everywhere else in the world. So if we want to do that, and I agree we should do that, get ready for higher prices. That being said, we can offset those higher prices by making things in the USA that work for more than 2 years before they freaking break. My damn coffee maker, man. Every freaking morning, I got to hit the button 3 times on my Keurig to get it to make me a cup of coffee, and I get pretty bitter when my wake-up juice ain't spit out in time. How about we make coffee makers here in the States that don't need to be replaced every 2 years or every 3 years? And then if it's more expensive, it doesn't matter because over the course of 10 years, you're only buying 1 instead of 3. Just an idea. Remember, made in USA used to mean quality? Remember that? Thank you, Grandpa, for supporting the channel. Merry Christmas, sir. Hunt and Cover says, Merry Christmas, Jack. No afternoon streams, sadness, and withdrawal. Sorry to break it to you guys. Look, Fridays are brutal. The live stream schedule has been really stifling for the last year. You guys may have noticed the regular videos are getting fewer and far between. The burnout is very real. The pressure to keep the content flowing, to keep this many live streams growing, has really just stifled the creativity on the channel. And I'm not getting many videos made because of it. And it's slowing down the growth of the channel. So I'm really trying to get more videos made, which means I got to get the creative juices flowing more often, which means I can't be up against the clock trying to get a live stream put together day in and day out. And so the Friday live stream, I love the Friday afternoon stream. It was actually my favorite time of the week. But it is the obvious choice if something needs to go. So sorry about that one, Hunt and Cover, but I appreciate the good vibes and the support of the channel. Thank you very much, sir. And Armando Reyes says, the sky could be falling and I wouldn't mind one bit. I'll just be sitting back, sipping on my iced tea and playing with my silver coins. I'll be sipping on my coffee and playing with my silver bars, Armando Reyes. But, you know, I kind of get the same vibe, you know, like, again, and not to belittle the human cost here, but the whole idea of a government shutdown, like, guys, this government bureaucracy has become this giant bloated beached whale that now just needs to be fed for its own existence. Like, if we're sitting here saying we need to hopelessly indebt ourselves, we need to endlessly inflate our savings and devalue our wages because we feel bad for people who work for the federal government, well, then that means the federal government just exists for its own survival, not to provide services and protection to the American people. All right. So if that's the only argument for keeping the government open, oh, what about the people who work for the government? Sorry, that means the government is too big and it needs to be shrunk. And yes, that sucks. And yes, that's easy for me to say because I don't work for the government. I do recognize the hypocrisy there. But just feeding the beast because the beast exists is not a recipe for success. That's going to make it worse for everybody in the long run. And so that's why I will be more inclined to join Armando in sipping on the iced tea and counting the silver coins, although mine will be coffee and bars. Thank you, Armando, for supporting the channel. The Beekeeper says drones are American-made HPGE nuclear detector drones monitoring around bases, etc. My opinion, government knows credible threat. Panic ensues if disclosed. Funny you should mention that, Beekeeper. I have heard this theory. All right. I don't know what an HPGE is. That might be a little bit of an amalgamation. There was a story about some nuclear material went missing in New Jersey. It was a GE. It was this little tiny probe that's used to calibrate radiation sources or calibrate medical equipment. It was a tiny little radiation source. All right. And this is, you're talking about something that like went missing in US mail. This is not like guys with guns protecting the nuclear material, right? This is a routine, very trace amount nuclear source that went missing. That is definitely not what the drones are looking for. I say that with absolute confidence. That is not what the drones are looking for, that missing GE probe. And the people that were reporting on it were just scaring people for headlines. That being said, there could potentially be some legitimacy to the idea that these drones are sniffing for nuclear material. It's a long shot, and it is a needle in a haystack if that's really what they're doing. There have been experiments done in the past. There was something called the Black Sea experiments, were done in the late 80s by the United States and the Soviet Union, or maybe it was Russia by that point. I think it was still the Soviet Union. But they were trying to see, can you detect nuclear warheads on board naval vessels in the Black Sea from overhead using aircraft? And long story short, these experiments were met with minimal success. Unexploded nuclear warheads do put off very trace amounts of radiation. And I mean very trace amounts. They're very hard to detect. You have to get really, really close. Now, since the 80s, detection technology may have improved, but you're also talking about detecting radiation levels that are, in a lot of cases, at or below background radiation, especially in areas where there's a lot of geological activity, a lot of radon gas coming up out of the ground. So if that's really what they're doing, the odds of success are very low. You would have to be right on top of the thing at an altitude of like 100 feet. And even then you might still miss it. So it's not unreasonable that that might be what they're doing, but it's very unlikely. Let's just put it that way. That's one of the more plausible theories I've heard put forward, that they're sniffing for a nuke. It's a little scary. But again, if that's what they're doing, it's a long shot. And I'm skeptical of even that. Honestly, I think it's a scare, and it's designed to scare people so that they can get funding for drone technology. The military is seeing what's happening in Ukraine. They're seeing how drones dominate the battlefield. They want more money to spend on drones and anti-drone technology. What better way to get that through a cost-conscious Congress than to scare the hell out of people to the point where they demand you take some action? And Senator Schumer has already presented legislation for anti-drone technology in the Northeast. So I'm leaning towards that as the credible threat. But the nuclear thing, it's plausible. Very unlikely, but plausible. And again, guys, I worked in nuclear power for 15 years, so I do know a little bit about this stuff. Not a lot. I wasn't in Rad Pro. I was on the engineering side, but it's really hard to detect one of those things from the air. Thanks again for the super chat, Beepkeeper. And thank you, Steve Canyon says, from 1,500 pages to 100 pages, the art of political maneuver. Who does it better? You know, Steve, I do like that the volume of the bill was shrunk, so at least we can read it now. At least the guys can read it. Even then, reading a 100-page bill before midnight tonight would be very difficult. That being said, what's in there? A 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling? That is not what we were promised during election season. A 2-year suspension of the debt ceiling. No, that's a non-starter for me. If I was in Congress, I would have voted no on both bills. Give us a clean bill. You want to help the people in the Southeast? Good, I agree. A clean bill to do that. You want to pass a farm bill? A clean bill. You want to fund the government? Clean it up. Enough of this crap being stuffed in there, please. Thank you so much, Steve, for supporting the channel. T-Spin being just a swell guy, giving us a super chat. Thank you, T-Spin. Was that a super sticker here? No, he's just being good. Did he ask anything else? I'm sorry, T-Spin. I don't see if there was another comment. Let me check to see. Nope. T-Spin, Mish says no. Thank you, Mish, for that. Appreciate the good vibes, T-Spin. Thank you, sir, for supporting the channel. Merry Christmas, sir. Eduardo Garcia says, maybe biased. I think Trump's testing waters and setting negotiating anchor with black check. He has to know that today's Congress won't approve. It's possible, Eduardo. I mean, he's a strong-arm negotiator. That's how he rolls. He usually always asks for more in your first round. That's plausible. That being said, guys, the suspension of the debt ceiling, stop suspending it. Raise it if you must. If it's absolutely catastrophic, if we don't, raise it, but stop suspending it. Suspending the debt ceiling is a blank check. We can't do that. That needs to stop. Thank you very much, Eduardo, for supporting the channel. M&J says 50 more subs to go in the melon patch. Grow, grow, grow. All I want for Christmas is 60,000 subscribers. So feel free to tell all of your friends and family about the melon heads, guys. Let's get over that 60,000 number for Christmas. That'd be swell. Thank you, M&J, for everything you do for the channel. You're awesome. Nashville Pasta Man's back says Volkswagen just announced 10,000 more jobs going away. Wow, that's, man, I tell you, things in Germany, they are putting on a masterclass in destroying your own economy. We might as well just elect Greta Thunberg to run that country at this point. Things are really bad in Germany. Between the higher energy costs and the cheap Chinese EVs, I don't know what's going to happen to the German auto industry. They're having their cash for clunkers moment. We're not looking so good in the auto industry here either in the States. Don't be surprised to see the car companies looking for a bailout at some time in 2025. That's 2020's bingo update right there. Thank you, Pasta Man, for supporting the channel. And thank you, Bo Kane, who says, Francis Hunt calling for further pullback in silver by the dip. If we really are headed to a deflationary bust, then silver would go lower. And right now we are headed for a deflationary bust. We're seeing the dollar go higher, interest rates move higher, but never forget the Zerpenburg. Look at what's going on in Congress. They're trying to Zerpenburg at the same time. So which way does silver go? It depends on if we opt for the deflationary bust or the hyperinflationary bust. That remains a fork in the road, and much like the Oracle and Morpheus, you can't see past the choice. Hedge, be prepared for both. That's the only thing I would say. I still like silver as a long-term protection for my wealth, so I like storing it outside of the financial system. Thank you very much, Bo Kane. Thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads. We ran long today. I appreciate all the super chats and the generosity. Merry Christmas, everybody, to you and yours. Thank you so much for the super chats. Thank you to my magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. Appreciate that very much. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.